The ceremony was ready to begin. Rows of polished chairs, crisp uniforms, and the quiet hum of anticipation. A Navy band tuned their instruments. The flag hung like a promise. The air was thick with pride and grief. And yet, in the center of it all, a three-star admiral stood alone, his hands clenched so tight his knuckles went white. He stared at the empty chair reserved for a single man who was not there to take his place. Not because he was late, not because he was sick, not because he chose not to come, because he was missing, because he was still out there. The admiral did not sit. He did not bow. He did not allow the ceremony to begin. And in that moment, everyone realized the truth they had been avoiding. A man was still alive somewhere, and the Navy would not let him be forgotten. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're rewatching from. I love knowing who's listening. The new recruit standing at the edge of the ceremony line had never seen anything like it. She'd trained for the routine, the precision, the discipline, the quiet strength of a Navy ceremony, but she had never seen a three-star admiral break the rules. She had never seen a man in power refuse to follow the script. The air felt heavier than it should. It was early morning, but the sun had already climbed high enough to burn through the mist, turning the yard into a field of shimmering heat. A faint breeze moved the flags like slow breathing. The crowd waited. The sailors stood at attention. The band held its instruments. The admiral did not move. The missing man's chair sat there like a wound. Everyone in that room felt it, even the ones who tried to ignore it. And the new recruit, whose name was Lieutenant Mara Collins, felt something else. Quiet anger, like a flame lit in her chest. She did not know the missing man. She didn't know his story. But she understood what the admiral was doing. He was refusing to let the Navy turn a person into a statistic. He was refusing to let a life be replaced by a ceremony. Mara's mind wandered to the day she had enlisted. She remembered the way her mother had hugged her too tightly, as if she was trying to keep her from leaving. She remembered the day she saw her first ceremony, how she had watched the family members cry, and wondered if she would ever see her own face in a crowd like that. She had never expected to stand here, watching a three-star admiral choose to stand rather than sit. It felt like a lesson, a warning, a promise. The admiral's name was Vice Admiral James Kellen. His reputation was as polished as his medals. A man who made hard decisions and never apologized for them. A man who was feared, respected, and admired. But the thing about respect is that it can be earned in many ways. Sometimes it is earned by mercy. Sometimes it is earned by sacrifice. And sometimes it is earned by refusing to move on until everyone else remembers. The missing man's name was Petty Officer Second Class Elias Eli Hart. He had been part of a special rescue team sent into a hostile zone to recover a downed pilot. The mission had been short, brutal, and the kind of thing people didn't talk about unless they had to. Eli was the kind of sailor who never wanted the spotlight. He was quiet. He was skilled. He was the kind of man who made sure others survived before he even thought about himself. When the mission went wrong, Eli didn't hesitate, didn't freeze, he didn't argue with orders. He ran toward the danger, and he vanished. His radio went silent. His team searched. His team prayed. But the hostile zone was unforgiving. The enemy was relentless. The night was black as ink, and Eli was gone. Not dead, not alive, just gone. A missing man, a void, ? As the ceremony remained frozen, whispers began to spread through the crowd. People exchanged glances, uneasy and confused. Some were angry, some were relieved. Some didn't understand why the ceremony couldn't continue without one man. But then the admiral spoke. His voice was low, and the silence made it sound louder. We do not honor our dead by pretending they are not missing. The words hit the crowd like a shockwave. A sailor near the front swallowed hard. A mother in the audience wiped her eyes. The new recruit, Mara, felt tears prick her eyelids. She did not even know the man. And yet the admiral's words made her feel the weight of every life that had ever been lost in silence. The admiral's assistant approached, whispering something into his ear. The admiral did not look away. He only nodded. And then he did something that shocked everyone. He walked toward the empty chair. He placed his hand on it. Not like a ritual, not like a symbol, like a promise. The crowd held its breath. The admiral then turned to the assembled sailors and said, "We will not sit until Eli Hart is brought home." The words hung in the air like smoke. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Some sailors nodded. Some frowned. Some looked at the Admiral like he had lost his mind. But Mara understood. She understood because she had felt the same anger, the same pain, same refusal to let someone vanish without a fight. The Admiral's decision was not just about one man. It was about what the Navy stood for. It was about a promise. It was about honor. Over the next hours, the ceremony transformed into something else. It became a mission. The Navy pulled together every resource they could. Helicopters were readied, search teams were mobilized, communications officers worked through the night. Mara watched from the sidelines as the plan was formed, and she realized that the Admiral's refusal to sit had changed everything. The missing man was no longer a memory. He was a priority. The entire base moved like a single organism, all parts connected by one shared purpose. And then, as dusk approached, a radio call came in. A faint signal, a voice, a crackling whisper from the darkness. It was Eli. He was alive. He was wounded, was trapped, and he was still fighting. The base erupted in movement. A rescue team prepared. The Admiral stood, silent and steady, watching the operations with the same intensity he had shown at the ceremony. Mara followed the rescue team with her eyes, feeling her heart pound as if she were the one going into the darkness. She thought she'd never see him again. She was wrong. The rescue team moved through the night like shadows. The air was cold, and the ground was rough with rocks and debris. Every step felt like a gamble. Every sound felt like a warning. And then, just before midnight, they found him. Eli Hart. He was alive, but barely. His uniform was torn. His face was smeared with dirt. His breathing was shallow, but he was breathing. When they lifted him, his eyes opened, saw the rescue team, and for a moment, his face softened. Then he whispered, "I knew you wouldn't leave me." The rescue team carried him back, and when he returned to the base, the crowd gathered around him. The murmurs turned into applause. The silence turned into cheers. The Admiral stood in the center, watching, did not clap, he did not cheer, but he finally sat. And the chair, once empty, now held a man who should not have been alive. The ceremony began at last, not as a ritual, as a tribute, as a promise kept. Because honor isn't a word you say, it's a choice you make. The Navy proved that. In a world that moves on too quickly, some promises never fade. Because respect isn't earned by standing alone. It's earned by standing up for those who can't. And in the soft morning light, the empty chair was no longer empty. It was full. Full of hope, full of courage, full of a man who refused to be forgotten. If you want more stories like this from Whispered Words, hit subscribe and leave a comment. Tell me, what would you do if you were the one missing? Because sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to sit down.